Welcome to Sunday Live. Scott asked a question just now, and the question was, are we going to start with that song?
And the answer is yes.
The answer is yes. So welcome aboard. We've officially started. It is Sunday Live. You know what that means. It's time for learning more about hypnosis. Time for Scott to ask the hard questions to our very intelligent guests, and for our honored guest tonight to profound or pontificate awesome stuff and to actually hypnotize you too. We do this on the first Sunday of every month, and that's today, June 5th, 2016. And so Scott and I and our lovely guests who we'll introduce in a moment are really glad that you're here tonight. And I'm going to type in the chat box as usual while Scott introduces our awesome guests.
Hello, everybody. I hope you have had a great month since the last time we've done this. I've been having a lot of fun. I spent the weekend riding my bike around, having interesting meetings, and taking my son to his first beach outing where he and I got a little bit of a sunburn. It was a ton of fun, and we're having a great day. So tonight we have two guests that I've known for quite a long time, and I think they're both just a ton of fun. And like I put in my Facebook post talking about tonight, there's no way we're going to stay on topic or on one topic for this entire show. The first person I want to introduce, I'll go ladies first, is a moderator on HypnoThoughts. Everybody knows her. She's awesome. She's fun. She runs a Hypnotic Women group on Facebook. Kelly Woods is awesome. Kelly, how are you, and what's going on tonight?
Woohoo, thank you. Happy to be here. From sunny Seattle. It hit 90 degrees here today.
Awesome. And the second person, also from sunny Seattle, is one of the first hypnotists I ever met. We met in 1998 at the American Board of Hypnotherapy Conference at the Radisson Hotel. And he was incredibly nice to me. Yeah, down the street from where I am now, as a matter of fact. He was incredibly nice to me. Not all hypnotists are as nice as he can be. I'm fortunate. I don't even know if I would be here if people weren't as nice to me as Roger Moore was to me. Roger, hello, and how are you doing?
I'm doing really well, Scott. It's 88 degrees here on Bainbridge Island, which is almost unheard of, and there's not a cloud in the sky, and it's total blue sky, and so I'm good.
When you guys get blue skies and green leaves, it's one of the most beautiful places on Earth.
It is. And the rest of the time. By the way, down below is a chat box, and so make sure you sign into the chat box. That's a place where you can ask Roger any questions. You can ask Scott any questions. You can ask me a question, and you can ask Kelly Woods a question. Now, Roger has always been one of my favorite hypnotists as well. Kelly certainly is as well. All three of us have actually taught together. But Roger, let me ask you about something that I think is really important, and I'm going to put a link in the chat box to it so that people can find it easily on your newly revamped Hypnosis Health Info website. By the way, that's probably the largest hypnosis website on the internet, isn't it? Am I correct in that, probably?
If it's not the largest, it's second to HypnoThoughts.
Okay. There you go.
I'm not sure which one's bigger.
But one of the resources on there is called Orange Blossom, and I give this link to as many people as possible, and I'll put it in the chat box so people can have access to it. You're kind of known for this recording because, well, you've been giving it away for years. What is that all about?
Over 100,000 downloads.
How many downloads?
Over 100,000. I should have charged $1 a piece.
There you go. 100,000 downloads. That was actually probably me downloading it 99,995 times. But why is that? That's probably the most popular hypnosis download that exists on. If you've downloaded 100,000.
Well, it's used in a lot of oncology departments have it in their soundtrack system, their choices for people to listen to. Other medical centers use it pre-surgery, post-surgery. I get emails several times a week from around the world from people telling me they go to sleep with me every night. It's just one of those recordings that, well, I originally learned it from Bob Otto. And I came up with my own version of it and had a lot of requests from my clients for it. And he was kind and gracious enough to allow me to record it and put it out there. And it's I listen to it from time to time. Um, but it's one of those things that people just don't allow.
The chef eats his own dinner.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you mentioned Bob Otto as sort of the source inspiration for this, and then you kind of took it and ran with it in your own direction, obviously. Yeah, I think it's wonderful that you, every time I've heard you talk about this over the years, you've always given credit to Robert Otto, which I think is worth pointing out, because so many people in our industry take something and put a spin on it and then pretend that they invented the whole thing. And with 100,000 downloads, you could claim this thing and say that Robert Otto stole it from you, and everyone would believe it. But the fact that you still show the respect to the person who, kind of pushed this in the right direction in the beginning, I think that says a lot about what we should all be doing as peers and colleagues. And I want to point out that you're doing that right, and everybody should salute you for that.
Well, it's important to give credit to where you learned the source, where you learned it from, and he, like I said, he was very, very gracious and very kind to allow me to use it. So I just think that's what, as professionals, we should be doing for each other.
Yeah, I couldn't agree. Before we get into all the professionalism, I got to ride a bike today, and I knew I was going to have you on the show tonight, and so I was thinking about you as I was riding my bike, because I've got a lazy beach cruiser, and I was pretty vertical, and just looking at the scenery, and I was thinking, this is probably not the way that Roger rides. I know you are an avid bicyclist. What are you up to?
104 miles yesterday.
How many?
104.
Oh, my legs are tired because I did 4. 104 miles in a day on your bike.
Flying Wheels Bike Ride was yesterday. It's an annual event here.
Is the entire protocol of Slender for Life just ride 104 miles in a single weekend?
Exactly. That's how you do it.
And then just eat cookies?
Yep. Yep.
That's good. Jeez, 104, that's impressive. Yeah, that's the opposite of what I did.
I only did 12 today just to spin out.
Yeah, just to spin out. Yeah, your warm down was more than everything I did. And Kelly, you do martial arts.
I do. I've studied it for 14 years.
And you're a black belt in which?
Shito-ryu karate, which is a traditional Okinawan style.
Cool. So we've got Roger will be the getaway car, and Kelly's going to go commit violent crime and mess you up if you don't get better.
That's right.
1, 2, 1.
Actually, sometimes I bring a punching bag and some knuckle guards to my office and have certain clients learn how to punch the correct way, and it's amazing. It's pretty fun to do.
Huh.
Let me ask you a question, Kelly, because we are lucky tonight in that we have experienced hypnotists on here, not people who wish they were doing hypnosis, but actually people who really do hypnosis and earn a living from it. So let me ask you, since you are an experienced hypnotist, in addition to having them punch stuff, what are 3 things that you wish that you knew when you started that you now know?
Well, I think I wish that I had just trusted my own subconscious mind to come up with directions and answers instead of trying to be so scripted and pre-planning a session. I spent many hours in the beginning trying to control the way things would go, and I'm sure I made lots of mistakes that way and missed a lot of important opportunities to help a client even more effectively.
I saw Scott holding his fingers up counting, so that was one.
That was one.
That was one. You got 2 more.
This number 2 that I wish I had known was how easy it would be to work with the medical community. I was pretty intimidated by these professionals who had much more academic experience, and it took me a while to get comfortable starting dialogues with them, and really it's it's amazing how much they want our help and how they welcome it.
That's two.
Yeah. The third thing that I wish I had known was how to find other hypnotists to befriend and be part of that community. And it wasn't until Scott Sandlin came across my radar and HypnoThoughts that I actually was able to make those kind of connections. For probably the first 5 years of my practice, I worked pretty much in isolation beyond some trainings that I had done in my initial 1 year of certification. So that opened up so many doors and brought mentors such as yourself into my life, and also allowed me to share, you know, the things that I was learning along the way. So that's 3.
All right.
That's 3.
Roger, you've been doing hypnosis since the beginning of time. Am I correct on that?
Before time.
Okay, before time. So Roger's been doing hypnosis since before time began. Roger eats very well, which is why he looks so good for being 293 years old. He also rides a bike a lot, so at 293, you're still looking good. But what are the 3 things that you wish you knew when you started that you now know?
When I started hypnosis?
Yeah.
That it was okay to screw up in making transitions from the induction to the therapy. It was okay just to screw up in the whole process. It didn't have to be perfect. And there are times where, you know, I can be going along and off in my own little trance, and then realize I have no clue where I'm at or what I just said or where to go next, and I'm lost, and it's still okay. And that's a freedom when you let go of rigidity and as Kelly talked about, you know, of having to do it perfectly. You don't. It's you just go with the flow.
You know, I had that experience. I put one of the first hypnosis videos up on YouTube when YouTube started and got, you know, 1 million hits on it. And what's funny is I said, and now I'm going to count from 1 to 3 and open your eyes feeling wide awake. 1, 2, 1. And so 1 million people have commented that I screwed up my count. And here's what I learned from that, though. Nobody's stuck in hypnosis. They were able to leave a comment. Even though I didn't count correctly, apparently I have a hard time counting 1 to 3, which is why I'm a therapist, because I couldn't do math. But I learned from that, and I learned it's perfectly okay, because the subconscious mind will do what it's supposed to do, despite my incompetence as a hypnotist at times.
I had a 7-year-old point out to me the other day, or asked me why I had 1, 2, 3, 3, 4, 5. And I looked at him, what are you talking about? He says, you had 3 in there twice. I went, okay.
I had a client for perfectionism, and I was doing a 10 to 1 countdown and skipped 6. And she said, you know, that was really brilliant. You were imperfect in the count, and it still worked. It helped me so much. And I was like, that's right. It's one of my strategic strategies that I have there. It's a strategic strategy that we use sometimes. And she thought she loved it.
Yeah.
Cool.
Okay, so that's only 1 from you, Roger. You got 2 more insights.
Meet the client where they're at. I can walk into a session thinking I know what we're going to do today, and they open their mouth and start talking about something totally different than what I thought we were there for, and it becomes very obvious very quickly that we're not going to do what I thought we were going to do, and that's okay. It's their session, and my job is to meet them where they're at and help them move through what's going on for them. Third one, have fun. Even when I got somebody that's just had a death and, you know, a spouse or a partner or a child, even in those sessions, somewhere there's some levity, somewhere we end up starting laughing. I'll have them tell me something funny about, you know, their loved one, and to create some laughter, some humor, and where there's that space where we can cry and where we can laugh, and make it okay to have a full range of emotions.
So the six things that you guys just said all sound really simple, right? You know, meet the client where they're at, have fun, be comfortable screwing up, you know, don't be so scripted, relax. All these things, you know, and trust your instinct. All these things that you guys said are very easy to say, right? So why does it take time for those to be the important things, right? Because neither of you said anything technique-y, right? Neither of you said, oh, always use parts therapy or parts therapy sucks. You didn't say anything technique-y at all. You said things that sound pretty simple. So why are those really simple things so profound, and why did it take so long for those to be the important ones?
I think as I listen to like at IMDHA or other conferences, as I hear instructors talk, and I just kind of wonder, why are they making this so hard?
And it's hard to sell a book about it if it's easy.
What was that, Scott?
Hard to sell another book on it if it's easy, right?
That's true. That's true. You know, and I just listen. I go, okay, so there's some great tools, some great techniques, and I want as many tools and techniques as in my toolbox as possible. But I also teach my clients things that are really, really simple, quick, and easy, and almost and downright silly that work. And it doesn't have to be hard.
So, Kelly, why did it take those the three things that you mentioned, or the three that Roger mentioned, if there's one of those that you grabbed onto?
Absolutely, I agree with, you know, getting out of our own heads and, you know, taking our own medicine, going there with the client or even before them. All of those.
Why is it hard? Why? I mean, I went through it too, and I get that, but why is that a difficult thing for us to instill in young or aspiring or new hypnotists? Why can't that message come first, or could it?
I think it could, but I think there's a lot of emphasis on information. And if you think about all of our traditional ways of learning, going through traditional school systems, the emphasis is on information. And so we need that information, we need those strategies, but perhaps it's not quite in the right balance.
So you're not saying we should have a book burning of our big red book of hypnosis scripts? Can we keep that, or should we throw that? Or should we all throw those away?
Oh, absolutely. I think those are so great for stimulating our own creative abilities.
Yeah, Richard's got his in his room in front of him right now.
Yes.
I have over 1,000 scripts on my iPad.
Look at those. You've got 1,000 scripts on your iPad. How often are you looking at that?
Almost every session.
See, that's amazing, right? You've been doing this. You've been doing it longer than I have, obviously, because we met when you were a presenter at a conference, and I was at my first conference. And you're still getting inspiration from source material, right?
Yeah. I don't have 1,000 scripts memorized in my head.
Okay. Yeah.
Or
I know anybody who should.
My own scripts that I've used for years. There are times where, as I said, I'll be off in my own little trance in my own little world, and I'll realize I don't know where I'm at, and I'll look down my iPad and just kind of, as I'm talking, and oh yeah, here's where I am, and then I go off in my own little world again. Let's say I don't read them word for word, but they're a roadmap for a guide.
You know, I've driven to Texas literally 1,000 times from Oklahoma. I mean, probably 1,000 times. I don't even know. I mean, there's probably that many. And yet, I still use the GPS and I still use the map. And the reason why is I just like it there. I literally know what's at every single mile marker between Tulsa and Dallas. I mean, I've done that, 50 times a year for 20 years. And I just like having the map. One of the things I love about my script books is they're my scripts and I wrote them, and so I have them in my office and I use them all the time with my clients. And I never read scripts to them as if, it's just a rote process. But I use those as a guide. Like I said, if I have 6, 7, 8 clients in a day, I can't possibly remember everything they need. And so I use those scripts because that way I can make sure that they got what they came there for.
Well, Scott, I think another great explanation of this process is you're a new parent, and you're probably already reading stories to your son, if I know you. After a while, you won't just be reading those stories, or maybe you're already making up stories for him.
Sure.
And so, reading these things, using these templates, it starts to create a finesse in being able to do that. And actually, I'm kind of surprised at how many new hypnotists don't really believe they have that kind of creative edge.
Yeah.
So what can we do? So here's the thing that I see. The 4 of us have been doing this for a long time, and we all got success with our clients, and so things become easy for us. And I always use the metaphor of chefs and cooks. And you watch, even like that movie Ratatouille, he's making simple dishes, but he's doing it in a way with really simple ingredients, really pure ingredients, and sometimes the most expensive restaurants have very few ingredients on the plate, but the execution is, there's an intangible there in the execution that makes it great, right? So is that something, I think it's something that we see, in our peers and our colleagues, and we appreciate it. And that's one of my favorite reasons for going to conferences and seeing that. Can that be taught, or can that be accelerated, or does that just take hours?
Practice is definitely the best thing that can be done, in my opinion, because that's how we just start to take that in, and we get the brain muscle memory of that.
And so, getting out of your own way.
So Kelly's saying you can't become a black belt in 2 really good hours of hard work?
You might think that you are, but that's something different.
Then you enter a tournament?
Right.
Okay, see, this is fun for me, and the people who've watched this a lot know that, like, the thing I love about Sunday Live is that we just get actually genuinely cool people that we like, and we only get people that we want to talk to, because I wouldn't spend my Sunday evening with people I don't want to talk to, and so we just get to talk about all this stuff. But we've got to get to stuff. We got to get to business. We got to get to work. You guys have in 2 days a webinar that you guys are doing. Is that right? On Tuesday? Tuesday night. Let me look on the site to see if there's a link for that. Yeah, there's a link above the video. You guys can see it. What's going on at that webinar on Tuesday night?
Well, we're going to be talking about how to help your clients who are living with disease, specifically cancer, and illness, and how to set boundaries with family and friends. Because so often people are dealing with cancer or other illness, and they got all these family members and all these friends that are constantly calling, how you doing, and delivering casserole dishes, and freezers are bursting with casserole dishes, and so how do you set those boundaries and tell people, leave me alone and stop calling, and I don't need another casserole, thank you. We're going to talk about how to create a safe space to talk about cancer and about being sick and about dying. From my experience, when I have somebody that's in end-stage cancer and they know they're dying, their family members, often their partners, their friends, are telling them, "Oh no, you're going to be just fine. You'll get over this," and they have no space, no one they can talk to about the fact that they're going to be here for Christmas, that they're not going to be there for their next birthday or the next spring, and this is the last time they're going to, see their roadie blossom or whatever. This is the end for them, and there's no room to talk about that. So we're going to talk about how to create a safe space. And then, Kelly, do you want to take the last one?
Well, we're going to be talking about lots of different things. I don't remember exactly what that last one was, but I think one of the really important factors of our role is to keep a balance in providing hope and inspiration and motivation for cancer care clients without implying that what we're doing is curing them. And then also to be stepping into their belief system. If they're undergoing a treatment that we may not personally ascribe to, we need to make sure that that's not running over into how we're working with them, that we honor their choices.
That is so much. I mean, just one of the best pieces of advice I ever got from a mentor was the CEO of a drug rehab center. He had been a clinical director, and then they had promoted him to CEO, and he was just an amazing therapist. He's a great guy. And I was going through something difficult in my life at the time. And so I came and tell him, hey, I'm going through some difficult stuff. I'm not going to be in all the groups I'm supposed to run. I'm going to have some subs in for me, and I'm bringing in some of my team to do it. And he said, well, how are you? And I said, I'm okay. I'll be all right. And he looked at me and said, Scott, it's okay to not be okay. Yep. And he said, look, I understand in your office you don't want to be a real human being, and I understand when you're working with the stuff that matters to you in your personal life that's where you're going to try to be a tough, on-duty, helpful person. So, and he just said, I want to give you my office as a space where you can be not okay. And you can come in here anytime, day or night. I'll give you a key. And anytime you just need to be not okay, this is a space for you to do it. And even if I had never used it, just knowing that I had a space where I could be not okay changed a lot about going through that experience. So just helping someone to create that for themselves, because he created it with a sentence, right? And so helping our clients or the family members of the person dealing with illness to create safe spaces for themselves is so huge. And and to, like both of you just said, it's a lot of people want to just placate and say, oh, everything's going to be okay. Oh, just think positive. But what you're talking about is actually about helping the person with the realities of the situation they're in, which is so respectful. And I just love that the two of you are talking about this. Sorry, that's my rant. Forgive me.
That's a great rant. And so you touched on another aspect that's really important, and Roger and I are always very cognizant of the need for the practitioner to have self-care. After working with people who have chronic and life-threatening illnesses, it can really take a toll, especially a lot of people that get into this work are very empathetic. They're very compassionate people. And so it's important to have some strategies in place to be able to discharge the load that comes with dealing with these cases.
That's actually how I became such good friends with Roger. Years back, I had some health problems, and I knew that I needed somebody to help me in that moment. And so I called two people. I called Dave Park and I called Roger Moore. And I really didn't know Roger very well. I mean, we knew we knew of each other, but he's somebody who I went to when I needed help, and that was the right thing for me. In fact, routinely and regularly in my life, I have sought out other hypnotists to work with from a client perspective, because when I take care of myself, it helps me be a better hypnotist with my clients.
Totally agree.
And that self-care, at least when I have a client that's in end stage and when they pay, during that time together, there's a bond that forms, and I learned so much from these folks, and there's just a special connection. And when they pass, I need to give care to myself and allow for my own sense of grief and loss as well. And as Kelly said, that's one of the things we're going to talk about is how to be there professionally and also give self-care.
So, first one real quick with just this question. What time on Tuesday is this webinar?
It's 5 o'clock. Yeah, 5 o'clock Pacific Daylight Time.
That's the hardest question. But the next question I want to ask is more hard-hitting. So Roger, what you were just talking about is the grief of, a client, dying. Let's talk about the reality of doing this work day in and day out. Both of you are working in medical contexts, medical communities, and working with people for pain and terminal illnesses. What's it take from you, not at the most extreme, not when the client passes away, but just seeing 3 clients in a row for that topic, or 6 clients in a day on that issue? What's it take to go from that to being present with your family? What's that? How do you do that?
Do you want to answer first, Roger? Go ahead.
Okay. So I used to struggle with this on how to create that safe space for myself. And I remember in one grad program learning about surrounding yourself in the white light and all that, and that felt like such a barrier between me and my client that I couldn't do that. And it was I think it was in a shamanistic counseling class in a grad school program that I did, that it was, they talked about flow through. And so I can be with the client and have them be dealing with what it is they're dealing with, and I can allow that energy to flow through. I can experience it, and it keeps going. And that's the imagery that I start out every morning with, and throughout the day, using self-hypnosis, remind myself of and hold that image of flow through. And when I'm done with the day, I've had a lot of experiences, but I don't bring any of it home. And for me, that's been the critical piece, is I can experience it, but I don't need it. I have enough of my own stuff. Thank you very much. And so it's just that flow through imagery of experience and move on. And then I just make sure before I leave the office, or if I'm here at home in this office and online with clients, that before I leave this room, I do some self-hypnosis to get reoriented and back for family time.
Thank you. What about you, Kelly?
Well, I love Roger's metaphor of letting it flow through, because then you're not in that position of having to reject it or repel it in some way and have that kind of force against it. I use a strategy that I actually teach all these clients, and that is to use brief, regular, at regular intervals, brief little experiences, little mindful hypnosis, which is a term that we coined with Hope Coaching, my project with Michael Elner and Alan Barsky. Mindful hypnosis being that we're not, going to such a deep state that our thoughts fade away, but it's an active one where we can do something with that energy. And I often do some imagery where I'm compartmentalizing it or releasing it, but just even going there for a minute or two, of course, elicits that relaxation response, which lets us get rid of the physical charge that we might be carrying from whatever that experience was. And so I do that regularly between clients, when I first arrive in the office and before I leave, and even throughout the rest of my life too. And it seems to keep me on a pretty even keel that way.
So two things that I want to share based on that. One is another example of what Richard Clark, who many of you guys on the watching this know, he was working in an inner city clinic in the bad part of LA, and his clients, 90% of them were, homeless, jobless, and many of them were either perpetrators of or victims of violent crime. His permanent caseload for 7 years, about 150 clients at any given time. He always had a waiting room full of misery every day, right? And people coming in talking about the violent crimes they'd committed last night. People were coming in talking about planning on committing crimes. People were talking about seeing their family members. And I said, Richard, how do you do that and then go look your, at the time, 10-year-old son in the face? How do you look at your wife in the face? And he said, I have a sailboat. And I said, what's that mean? And he said, every day I go from the clinic to my sailboat, and I work on my sailboat for half an hour, and then I go home. And he just gave himself a place for punctuation. So it's just another example of what some people like to do. And I think giving you guys as many opportunities for variety.
Absolutely.
Yes. Finding that thing, just applying the same approach that we're coaching our clients with to find the things that float their boat, right? That bring them happiness and joy and get their attention off of the suffering for a while.
So, Richard, it's time for you to say your every first Sunday of every month.
Every first Sunday, we get together and spend some time talking about hypnosis, and our lovely hypnotic guests will hypnotize you, and that's pretty cool too. And you get a chance to ask questions. The chat box is down below. Feel free to ask Roger Moore or Kelly Woods any of those tough questions. And so that's what I usually say every 20 or 30 minutes into this program, which I haven't said yet. All right, so let's see if there's any questions in the chat box. No questions in the chat box. Scott, make up a question.
Well, I was going to, instead of ask a question, I was going to give a prompt to both Kelly and Roger, since they're talking about these topics on Tuesday night, and then in a training coming up that we'll talk about it. But I wanted to read to both of you a quote that I'm sure you have both heard from Stuart Scott, who passed away from cancer a while ago. He won an ESPY award. He said this. He said, "When you die, it does not mean you lose to cancer. You beat cancer by how you live, why you live, and the manner in which you live. So live, fight like hell. And when you get too tired to fight, then lay down and rest and let somebody else fight for you." What do you both think about that? There are some people who would say that sounds defeatist. There are some people who would say that sounds badass. What do you guys think about that?
I think each individual is going to take something from that. Some people really embrace fighting imagery and the idea of fighting. Some people don't. And there's even a study in the area of breast cancer where they found that the women who had the highest survival rates really weren't the ones that had a fighting attitude. They had more of an acceptance without a resignation. So there's some research that may show that the fighting mentality isn't always the best. But again, I'm sure that's based on an individual. I've had clients all over that spectrum.
I always ask my client for their imagery. How would they describe the cancer? What does it look like? Color, shape, sizes, how would they describe it? And how would they describe the cancer leaving their body, their healing, their recovery? How would they describe the chemo, the radiation, working with the cancer? I want their imagery so I can feed that back to them. Because if somebody is, I've had people want to go to war and want to do nuclear war and blast it out, but more often it's much more having it dissolve, having it being released from their body naturally into the universe for the highest good of all concerned. It's a softer, more loving approach. And with that person, I certainly don't want to declare nuclear war on them. And so I spend quite a bit of time asking for their imagery, their descriptions of how they would describe the cancer and what's it look like and how it leaves their body. And everything I do from there on, I'm building scripts and stories and metaphors off of their words, their descriptors.
Yeah, and Scott, Stuart Scott's quote that was beautiful that you shared with us. Thank you. It reminded me of a client I worked with. It's been a couple of years now, who had lung cancer, and So she had gone through chemotherapy. She actually was referred to me because she was having panic attacks when she would get her radiation treatments, and I get a lot of referrals from the local radiation treatment clinic. And so in our work, she had already resigned herself that she was not going to survive this, and yet her entire family could not accept that, and so there was a lot of strife going on. And so providing her with that space to explore it, and we even did a death rehearsal at her request, and it was phenomenal. So when she did pass away, she was in such a place of peace and actual comfort that came into her whole body. Her doctors said that it was very unusual, that she really didn't need that much pain medication for the condition that she was in, and I do think it's because she had that mental comfort and that emotional comfort at that state.
So both of you basically just said, in response to that, in the Stuart Scott, fight sort of example. And Stuart Scott's, inspirational figure and all that. And both of you said, sure, if the client wants to use the metaphor of fighting, let's go with fighting. If they don't want to use the metaphor, if they want to use accepting and love, we'll use accepting and love. Has there been times, and you can be as specific as you want in this, have there been times when a client has brought something and sort of where they are, you said, we need to change where they are? Or do you just take whatever they're going to do and it's your job to make that work? Does that even make sense as a question?
I think I'm not sure. I think my response is I would take where they are and make that work.
I mean, is there anything that they could have as their approach walking in that you would say, look, the approach you have for how to get better sucks and we can't use it?
No, I've never intimated that even to someone. The only time that I would maybe offer an alternative is if whatever they're doing to resolve the problem they want me to help them with isn't working. For example, if they have an eating strategy and it's not helping with their nausea, or the way that they're sleeping, there's something interfering with that. And so then, of course, I help them come up with a more effective solution. But if they've made decisions on what kind of treatment they're taking or how they're approaching it, that's their business.
Cool. Roger, you got a question in the chat room from Carolyn. She did Dennis Chong's Reversing a Cancer class at the IMDHA conference and just did that session with a client who had throat cancer. This client's highly analytical, and she's wondering what kind of suggestions you would recommend, and Kelly, I'm sure you can answer in as well, on what she should be doing after that session next time.
And I was actually just reading Carolyn's comment there, and also Joe Moon's. I'm not familiar with the Chong technique. I've not studied that one, so I'm not sure how to respond in terms of the Chong technique. But with somebody who's very analytical, he's a CPA, so how would he describe healing? How would he describe recovery? What terms, what phrases would he use with the chemo and radiation for his body to rid itself of the cancer, and whether that be in numerical terms, or does he have a hobby, does he build things, but to help get ideas from him on structuring and to make it a very analytical therapy process.
I agree, and I think it's really interesting when it comes to working with clients who have cancer. It's really not that different than how we would with a client who has some other chronic issue. We'd want to prioritize what their most important thing to address is. Normally, it would be something like either the pain that they're enduring, the stress, the anxiety, the fear, sleep issues, and so if we can, address those individually as we would with any analytical client. And I liked how Roger described, using that CPA's metaphors, maybe even introducing the comfort scale instead of the pain scale.
Yeah.
Having them create a spreadsheet for their improvement in their sleep, for example, some way that they could track it through their lens.
Now, every Sunday, every first Sunday of the month, we get together to learn about hypnosis, to ask questions. And this has all been really interesting, talking about working with clients. But what do we do? What's the process we do with clients? Now, if I understand it correctly, Kelly, you have a plan to guide us through a process so that we can actually experience hypnosis tonight. Am I correct? You were going to do that?
Yes, I'm happy to do that. In fact, what I'd like to do is give everyone the experience of being able to set aside those unhelpful or unnecessary or just even stressful thoughts that we might take on in our work or in our private lives. And so, as I mentioned before, credit to quantum focusing. Some of this process comes from that source. So everybody can begin with a little bit of mindful breathing.
By the way, I always turn my, and Scott usually turns his camera and microphone off. We're still here. So that it's clear. So you're the strong one here. Just so explain, we haven't disappeared on you here.
We'll hide, but we're still here.
Okay, great. You guys can, and I'll make sure that I bring you back when it's time. Earlier Richard had mentioned that sometimes it's just the simplest things, and Roger mentioned that too, that our clients need to learn from us. And I'm still surprised at how often people aren't aware of how a simple breathing technique can change not just their physiology, but how they're feeling emotionally. And so I always make sure that I teach someone a good one that they can utilize, and I think it's a great way to start your experience here today. So if you think about rhythmic breathing, which is in a pattern, and I like to breathe to a count, I like to have my conscious mind track those numbers, not just because we hypnotists love numbers, but we also know that numbers distract the conscious mind and help move it away from some of those busying thoughts. So as you're there now, you can begin to focus on your breath, and I'll let you decide exactly how you want to count your breath. Perhaps you breathe in slowly and deeply and have a count to that. Perhaps you hold it for a while with another count, and perhaps when you're ready, you exhale comfortably, counting that. And you can repeat this process. As you do, maybe there's a part of your mind that's paying attention to how that feels, how any tension just begins to dissipate, begins to melt away. Breathing in this way is very easy to do. It's natural. You might find that you hear those numbers echoing in your mind, or perhaps you're more of a visual person and you can see them floating by like clouds. Or one of the imageries I really enjoy is to see them at the beach in the sand. The water comes up and erases one and leaves the next. But whatever way you're experiencing this is just right for you. You can begin to allow yourself to imagine that gentle breathing, bringing you to that inner sanctuary, that special place of yours that you've been to so many times before. That place where your body can rest and digest, where your mind can become even more relaxed, more comfortable. Perhaps you want to use all of your senses to take in what makes this place so special to you. You can notice if it's daytime or nighttime, the scenery, any colors or shapes. Maybe there are some sounds or music or fragrance. Feel free to reach out and touch or taste anything that you desire. It all belongs to you. And what I want you to notice about this very special place of yours is that it's unlimited. It's limited only by your imagination, which is limitless. In fact, over in one area, I'd like you to notice there's a container. It's a receptacle of some type. You know, it might be a box, or maybe it's a basket. It could be a trunk, or a locker, or maybe a closet. And when you open it, you notice that it's empty. But it's more than big enough, more than large enough to hold anything that's keeping you from feeling at peace. Any of those worries, any of those cares or concerns, they'll fit right in there. And the great thing is that you don't even need to do an inventory of them. Your subconscious mind knows what they are and also knows that they'll be safe there. So I'm going to invite you to just place them into that container now. They'll be just fine there. You can always go back later and get them if you need them, or you might decide to go back and pick and choose among them, taking the things that you need. Or your subconscious mind might even resolve some of them during this experience. Or you might decide to just leave them there, knowing that you will deal with the things that you need to deal with your enhanced state of mind. And then closing it up. You could even lock it up. You could put the key in your pocket and then let yourself just drift. Drift even deeper and further. I'd like you to find a spot where you could sit back or lie back and just feel so good, noticing how wonderful that feels. Just relaxing there. Nothing to do. Nothing to think about. Just enjoying that comfort and that peace. That's right. And if there's a word that denotes this feeling for you, you might think of that word or see that word. Let it resonate through your mind, through your body. And know that from this moment, from this very breath, any time that you think of this word, any time you speak this word, anytime you read this word or see this word in any way, that all these wonderful, peaceful, comfortable feelings will just come flooding right into your mind and your body, allowing you to feel even better. Understanding that what you're doing right now is a wonderful thing. Now, you're a kind and loving person, and you're being kind and loving to yourself. That's right. Now, of course, you could stay here as long as you want to, but then you might miss out on the rest of our wonderful presentation here tonight. So perhaps you could begin to bring yourself back as I count from 1 to 5. And when I reach 5, you can open your eyes and feel wide awake and alert. 1, taking back everything that is helpful from this experience. 2, just breathing in a comfortable sense of energy, feeling really good about who you are and how you're doing. 3, becoming aware of yourself there in your space. 4, preparing to open your eyes, feeling great. And 5, eyes open, fully alert. Welcome back.
That was wonderful. Thank you.
You're
I
welcome.
think Roger and Richard stuck in trance. Oh,
No, I'm not stuck in hypnosis.
That was awesome, Kelly. Thank you.
You're welcome. My pleasure. Thank you for letting me guide you today.
I want to comment on something that in the chat box.
Go ahead.
From Joe Moons, oops, just disappeared. As a cancer survivor, the self-care you just spoke about is so important. When clients pass, I found it important not to allow my own survivor guilt to kick in. And dealing with your own issues. And I totally know survivor's guilt and having In grad school, one of the things they talked about was every session is a self-counseling session. And so when clients are there before me, and there are times when I'm hearing their issues, and I'm going, oh God, you know, what's in here for me today? But to allow that space of where you can acknowledge your own survivor's guilt or your own stuff, stay focused on the client, learn from the client, and stay client-centered. That's it's an important dance to learn and to be able to do. And I'm glad that Joe brought that up.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you, Joe, for sharing that. That's a really important point. I think that also one of the things that I found to be valuable is finding meaning, as Viktor Frankl wrote in his seminal book. Finding meaning can reduce our suffering. And I worked with a young man who was in his 30s who had a brain tumor and had received about a year's worth of treatment and still was undergoing chemotherapy when he found me through his mother, who was a previous client of mine. And so I worked with him over the course of several months, and about 3 months into our work, he canceled an appointment because he was at the hospital, and my heart dropped. I thought, oh no, he's getting worse. Well, he had to be at the hospital because his wife had had a stomach ache in the middle of the night and went in and shortly after gave birth unexpectedly to their daughter, their first child, and they had no idea that she was pregnant. You hear about these stories, and they really happen. And he passed away about 3 months later, and it was another year after that his mother contacted me and asked if I would make a sleep recording for that baby, that the baby was having a really hard time sleeping. And I have to say, that was one of my most favorite recordings to make in the world, and I made it totally customized for that little baby. And I think that a part of me really healed from losing that client when I had that experience.
That's an awesome story. Like, that's like, you made the three of us speechless. There's so many things in that story.
Yeah.
One of which is the person not knowing they're pregnant until they give birth. And then you follow that up with getting to make a custom recording for an infant. That's cool. That's really cool.
Yeah.
Right,
That's the moments.
The links to the Tuesday class, the webinar that Roger and Kelly are doing, is up at the very top. And there's also a link to the October Seattle Hypnosis Conference, which is obviously in October, at the top of the page here. We really want to thank you for joining us tonight, for participating, Roger and Kelly, for sharing, for guiding us through
Great time.
for answering questions. You guys are awesome. And so are you. You're such a lovely audience. We'd take you home with us if we could, but we're all already home.
Thank you, guys.
Well, thank you.
Thank you. I love being on tonight.
I know.